The knock came at 2:47 a.m., sharp and insistent against Elena Martinez's trailer door. She'd been awake anyway, staring at the eviction notice that had arrived that morning, wondering how she'd scrape together next month's rent, with only $17 in her bank account. The sound made her heart race. Nobody knocked on doors in Clearwater Valley at this hour, unless something was terribly wrong. She peered through the peephole and saw him, Jake Morrison, the reclusive rancher who lived in the sprawling property beyond the hill. His weathered face was etched with something between desperation and embarrassment, his usually pristine cowboy hat askew on his dark hair. In all her 3 years living in this run-down trailer park, she'd never seen him this close to town, let alone at her door. "Mrs. Martinez." His voice was rough, uncertain. "I'm sorry to bother you so late, but I need help." Elena wrapped her thin robe tighter around herself and cracked the door open. Jake Morrison was legendary in their small Nevada town. Mysterious millionaire who'd inherited the Morrison Ranch 5 years ago and promptly fired every employee, choosing to work the vast property alone. People whispered about him at the diner, speculating about his past, his money, his complete avoidance of human contact. "What kind of help?" she asked, studying his face. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his steel-gray eyes, the tension in his jaw. "I need someone to clean my barn. I'll pay you $5,000. The words tumbled out of him like he'd been rehearsing them. "Cash, tonight." Elena's breath caught. $5,000 would solve everything: the rent, the utilities, maybe even enough left over for groceries that weren't ramen noodles. But something in his expression warned her this wasn't a normal cleaning job. "What's in the barn?" she asked quietly. Jake's shoulders sagged. "Something I should have dealt with years ago. Something that's been eating me alive." He looked directly at her then, and she saw something raw and vulnerable in his gaze. "I can't do it alone anymore. I tried, but The November wind whipped through the trailer park, rattling the thin walls and sending a chill through Elena's bones. She thought of her daughter Sophia, asleep in the back bedroom, and the scholarship applications they couldn't afford to mail. She thought of the job interviews that never called back, the bills that kept piling up, the dreams that seemed to shrink a little more each day. "When?" she heard herself ask. "Now, tonight. It has to be tonight." Elena looked at this stranger who somehow knew her name, who'd driven down from his isolated ranch in the middle of the night with an offer that sounded too good to be true. Every instinct screamed that she should close the door, go back to bed, pretend this surreal encounter never happened. But desperation makes people brave in ways they never expected. "Let me get dressed," she said, and saw something like relief wash over Jake Morrison's face. "But I want half the money up front." He nodded, already reaching for his wallet. "Thank you," he said, so quietly she almost missed it. "You have no idea what this means." As Elena closed the door to change clothes, she wondered if she'd just made the best decision of her life for the worst. The interior of Jake's pickup truck was immaculate, smelling of leather and something faintly masculine, cedar, maybe, or sandalwood. Elena sat rigidly in the passenger seat, clutching the $2,500 he'd counted out in crisp hundreds, still unable to believe any of this was real. The money felt substantial in her hands, more cash than she'd seen in years. "You didn't have to pay me half up front," she said as they wound through the dark country roads leading to his ranch. Jake's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Yes, I did. What I'm asking. It's not fair to ask anyone to do it for free, even with the full payment." The cryptic response sent a chill down Elena's spine. What exactly am I walking into? For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the engine and the crunch of gravel beneath the tires. Then Jake spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. I couldn't bear to clean out her things. They're all still in the barn: her art studio, her pottery wheel, her paintings. Everything exactly as she left it." His voice cracked slightly. "I locked it up after the funeral and haven't been back since." Elena felt her heart squeeze. She'd assumed he was single, had always been single. The pain in his voice was raw, immediate, like the wound was still fresh. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "What was her name?" "Sarah." Jake's lips curved in the barest hint of a smile. She was everything bright in the world. An artist, a dreamer. She could find beauty in anything. A rusted fence post, a dead bird, a storm cloud. She'd turn it into something magnificent. They passed through the ornate gates of Morrison Ranch, and Elena gasped. She'd never seen the property up close. Rolling hills stretched endlessly under the star-filled sky, dotted with clusters of cattle and horses. The main house was a beautiful blend of rustic stone and modern glass, warm light spilling from its windows. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "Sarah designed it. Every detail." Jake's voice was thick with memory. "She said she wanted to build a house where artists could come and create, where creativity could flourish. She had all these plans." He trailed off, pulling up in front of a large barn, about 50 yards from the house. Alina could see her own trailer park's lights twinkling in the distance. So far away, they looked like fallen stars. The contrast between her world and his was stark, almost surreal. "Jake," she said as he turned off the engine. "Why me? Why not hire a professional service?" He turned to look at her, and in the dim light from the dashboard, she could see the vulnerability he'd been trying to hide. "Because I've seen you at the diner. I've seen how gentle you are with your daughter, how you treat people with kindness, even when they don't deserve it. I've seen you working 3 jobs and never complaining." He paused. "I needed someone who would understand that these aren't just things to be thrown away. They're pieces of a person's soul." Elena's throat tightened. She hadn't realized anyone had been watching her, seeing her struggles and her small acts of humanity. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this," she admitted. Jake reached across the console and very gently touched her hand. His fingers were warm, calloused from years of ranch work. "You're the strongest person I know. You've been surviving impossible circumstances for years, and you've never let it break you." The weight of his words settled over her like a warm blanket. When was the last time someone had seen her strength instead of her need? "Okay," she said, squeezing his hand briefly before letting go. "Let's do this." As they walked toward the barn, Elena realized this wasn't just about cleaning anymore. Somehow, in the space of one truck ride, it had become about healing his aunt, maybe hers too. The barn doors opened with a creak that seemed to echo through the still night air. Jake's hand trembled as he reached for the light switch, and when the fluorescent bulbs flickered to life, Elena's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't a barn anymore, it was a cathedral of creativity. The space had been transformed into an artist's paradise, with soaring ceilings, skylights that would flood the space with natural light during the day, and carefully organized stations for different types of art. Canvases lined the walls, easels stood at various angles, and a potter's wheel sat in the center like a shrine. But it was the paintings that took Elena's breath away. Dozens of them, in various stages of completion, depicted scenes of the ranch in ways that made the familiar landscape look magical. Rolling hills seemed to breathe with life. Horses appeared to dance rather than graze, and storm clouds looked like celestial battles between light and darkness. "She was incredibly talented," Elena whispered, moving closer to examine a painting of the main house, surrounded by wildflowers that seemed to glow with their own inner light. Jake stood frozen in the doorway, his face pale. "I haven't been in here since." He couldn't finish the sentence. Elena could feel the weight of grief in the air, thick and suffocating. Every surface was covered with art supplies, half-finished projects, and the debris of a creative life interrupted. Coffee cups still sat on the work table, their contents long since evaporated to dark stains. A sweater was draped over a chair as if Sarah had just stepped out for a moment. "We don't have to do this all at once," Elena said gently. "We can take breaks." Jake shook his head. "No. It has to be tonight. I've been putting this off for 3 years, and it's killing me. I can't sleep, can't eat, can't think about anything else. I've been living like a ghost in my own home." Elena moved to the work table and picked up a small clay sculpture, a pair of hands cupped together, delicate and beautiful. "Tell me about her," she said. "What was she like?" Jake's shoulders relaxed slightly. She was chaos and beauty rolled into one. She'd get paint in her hair and not notice for hours. She'd forget to eat when she was working on a piece. She talked to her paintings like they were alive, encouraging them, scolding them when they weren't cooperating. Despite his pain, Jake smiled at the memory. She'd leave little notes for me around the house in my coffee cup, on my pillow, tucked into my jacket pockets. Just silly things, like the chickens are plotting against you or your smile is my favorite work of art. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "She sounds wonderful." She was so excited about starting a family. "We'd been trying for 2 years when she got sick." Jake's voice broke. "She never got to be a mother." The weight of that loss settled over the barn like a shroud. Elena understood now why Jake had locked this place away, why he'd been living like a hermit. This wasn't just an art studio, it was a tomb of dreams, a monument to everything that should have been. "What do you want to keep?" Elena asked softly. Jake looked around the space, overwhelmed. "I don't know. Everything. Nothing. I can't tell the difference anymore. Alina made a decision. Then let's start with the obvious things. The art supplies can be donated to the school. The unfinished paintings. Maybe we can preserve them somehow. And the personal items. She picked up a small jewelry box from the work table. These should be kept safe. For the next hour, they worked in companionable silence. Alina was surprised by how natural it felt, how easily they fell into a rhythm. Jake would tell her stories about different pieces, how Sarah had painted the Sunrise series during her chemotherapy treatments, how she'd thrown the clay vase on the potter's wheel the day before she was diagnosed. She made me promise, Jake said suddenly, pausing in his packing of art supplies. Right before she died, she made me promise that I wouldn't let her death be the end of everything. She said the ranch was meant to be filled with life and creativity, not turned into a mausoleum. Alina looked at him, understanding dawning. But you couldn't keep that promise. How could I? She was the life and creativity. Without her, I'm just ... existing. Alina set down the brushes she'd been sorting and walked over to him. Jake, look at me. When he met her eyes, she continued, you're not just existing, you're surviving. There's a difference. And sometimes, surviving is the bravest thing you can do. Something shifted in Jake's expression. A crack in the wall he'd built around his heart. I don't know how to live without her. You don't have to know how, Alina said gently. You just have to be willing to try. As the night wore on, Alina found herself drawn deeper into the story of Jake and Sarah's love. Each item they sorted through came with a memory, a piece of their life together that Jake seemed almost desperate to share. It was as if 3 years of silence had built up a dam inside him, and now that it had broken, the words wouldn't stop flowing. She convinced me to buy the ranch, he said, carefully wrapping a delicate glass sculpture in newspaper. I was working in finance in San Francisco, miserable but making good money. Sarah was waitressing at this little cafe near my office, and she'd always talk about wanting to live somewhere with open skies and endless horizons. Alina smiled, picturing a younger Jake in a business suit, worlds away from the rugged rancher. Before her, so you just ... bought a ranch. It wasn't quite that simple. Sarah had this way of making impossible things seem inevitable. She described the life she wanted, the house we'd build, the animals we'd raise, the art studio she'd create. She painted pictures with words, and before I knew it, I was looking at real estate listings in Nevada. They'd found a system that worked. Alina would identify items and ask Jake about them, letting him decide what to keep, what to donate, and what to preserve. The painful part was becoming bearable, even cathartic. Jake seemed to grow stronger with each memory shared, each decision made. What about you? Jake asked as they took a break, sitting on hay bales with cups of coffee from the thermos Alina had thought to bring. You know my whole story now. Tell me about yours. Alina hesitated. Her story felt so small compared to his grand romance and tragic loss. There's not much to tell. I grew up in California, got pregnant young, moved here when Sophia was 2, because I could afford the rent. I've been working ever since, trying to give her a better life than I had. What about Sophia's father? He's not in the picture. Never was, really. It's just been me and her. Alina sipped her coffee, suddenly so anxious. I know it's not very exciting compared to Alina. Jake's voice was firm. Raising a daughter alone, working multiple jobs, never giving up, that's not unexciting. That's heroic. The sincerity in his voice made her cheeks warm. I don't feel heroic most days. I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water. The best heroes usually do. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of the bonds, memories settling around them like a familiar blanket. Alina found herself studying Jake's profile in the soft light. He was handsome in a weathered, authentic way that spoke of honest work and genuine character. But more than that, he was kind. She could see it in how gently he handled Sarah's things, in how he listened to her stories without judgment. Can I ask you something? Alina said. Of course. Why tonight? What made you finally decide to do this? Jake was quiet for so long that Alina thought he might not answer. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Because I saw you at the diner yesterday. You were helping Sophia with her homework, and she was showing you some drawings she'd made. The way you looked at her, the way your whole face lit up with pride. It reminded me of how Sarah used to look at her art. Pure joy, pure love. Alina's heart clenched. Jake. I realized I'd been so focused on preserving Sarah's memory that I'd forgotten to live my own life. She wouldn't have wanted this me hiding away, letting fear and grief control everything. She would have wanted me to find joy again, to create something beautiful from the ashes. Alina reached out and covered his hand with hers. She sounds like she was very wise. She was, and she would have liked you. Jake turned his hand palm up, his fingers intertwining with hers. She would have said you have artist's hand, strong but gentle, capable of creating beauty even in difficult circumstances. The connection between them was undeniable now, electric and warm. Alina felt something she hadn't experienced in years. The flutter of possibility. The hope that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't destined to face life alone forever. We should finish, she said softly, though she made no move to let go of his hand. Yeah, Jake agreed, but he didn't move either. We should, but they sat there for several more minutes, hands clasped, surrounded by the remnants of one love story and the tentative beginnings of another. The eastern sky was beginning to blush with the first hints of dawn when they finally finished. The barn looked completely different, still beautiful, but peaceful now instead of haunted. Sarah's finished paintings were carefully stored and catalogued, her art supplies organized for donation, and her personal items packed in memory boxes that Jake planned to keep in the house. I can't believe we did it, Jake said, surveying their work. His voice was hoarse from exhaustion and emotion, but there was something lighter in his expression, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Alina felt drained but satisfied. How do you feel? Jake was quiet for a long moment, considering. Sad, but also ... relieved. Like I can finally breathe again. He looked at her with something approaching wonder. I couldn't have done this without you. I tried so many times, but I'd walk in here and just ... freeze up. Sometimes we need someone to help us carry the load, Alina said gently. There's no shame in that. As they walked back toward the house, Jake suddenly stopped. Alina, there's something I need to tell you. About the money. Alina's heart sank. Had this all been too good to be true after all? I lied about needing someone to clean the barn, Jake continued. I mean, I did need that, but I could have hired anyone. I specifically asked for you because I've been watching you for months, wanting to help, but not knowing how. Alina stared at him. What do you mean? I've been paying some of your bills. The electric company. The water bill. Sometimes I'd prepay your tab at the grocery store. I told them I was your cousin from out of state, helping out. Jake's face was flushed with embarrassment. I know it was presumptuous, but I couldn't stand watching you struggle when I had so much and wasn't using any of it. Alina felt a mixture of emotions wash over her: gratitude, embarrassment, confusion. Jake, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, please. I'm not telling you to make you feel obligated or grateful. I'm telling you because I want to be honest with you, and because I hope this isn't the end. The end of what? Jake stepped closer, his gray eyes intense in the growing light. The end of us talking. Of us spending time together. I know I'm broken, Alina. I know I'm still grieving, and probably will be for a long time. But tonight, working with you, talking with you, it's the first time in 3 years that I felt like myself again. Alina's heart was racing. Jake, I am not asking for anything you can't give, he said quickly. I'm just asking for a chance. A chance to get to know you better, to be part of your life, to help you and Sophia, if you'll let me. I know I'm not much of a catch right now, but Alina reached up and pressed her fingers to his lips, stopping the flow of self-deprecating words. You're wrong, she said softly. You're exactly the kind of man I never dared to hope existed. Kind, generous, honest, brave enough to face your pain and work through it. Jake's eyes searched her face. Does that mean ... It means I'd like to see what happens next, Alina said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'd like to take this one day at a time and see where it leads. Jake's smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Really, really. But I have conditions. Anything. No more secret bill paying. If you want to help, you ask me first. I need to maintain some dignity and independence. Jake nodded solemnly. Agreed. And you have to meet Sophia properly. If we're going to try this, she's part of the package. I'd be honored to meet her. Alina felt tears prick her eyes. And Jake, don't ever think you're not much of a catch. You're everything I never knew I was looking for. As the sun finally crested the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Jake leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle, tentative, tasting of coffee and possibility. When they broke apart, Alina felt like she was seeing the world in color for the first time. So what happens now? She asked. Jake smiled, his arm sliding around her waist. Now we watch the sunrise together, and then I make you breakfast, and then we figure out the rest as we go. Alina leaned into his warmth, feeling safer and more hopeful than she had in years. I like that plan. The Morrison Ranch house was even more beautiful inside than Alina had imagined. Sarah's artistic touch was evident everywhere, in the handcrafted pottery that held fresh flowers, in the way the morning light streamed through strategically placed windows, in the organic flow of the open floor plan that made the space feel both grand and intimate. Sarah designed all of this, Alina asked, running her fingers along the smooth surface of a dining table that looked like it had been crafted from a single piece of wood. Every detail. She said she wanted to create a home that felt like a warm hug. Jake moved around the kitchen with surprising grace, preparing breakfast with the ease of someone who'd been cooking for himself for years. I told her she was being too sentimental, that we needed to think about resale value. She just laughed and said, if we built it right, we'd never want to sell. Alina watched him work, noting the way his shoulders had relaxed since they'd finished in the barn. She was right. She usually was. Jake cracked eggs into a bowl, his movements economical and practiced. I've been thinking about converting the barn into an art center, like she always wanted. A place where local artists could come to work, take classes, show their pieces, maybe even offer scholarships for kids who can't afford art supplies. That sounds wonderful. Sophia would love something like that. She's always drawing, but I can barely afford to keep her in basic supplies. Jake paused in his whisking. Would you let me meet her? Today, I mean. I know it's moving fast, but I'd like to take both of you to breakfast in town. Let people see us together. Make it clear that I'm serious about this. Alina felt a flutter of nervousness. Jake, are you sure? Small towns talk, and once this gets out, there's no taking it back. I'm counting on it. Jake set down the whisk and turned to face her fully. Alina, I'm not interested in keeping this secret or casual. I've wasted 3 years of my life hiding from the world. I don't want to waste any more time. The intensity in his voice made Alina's heart race. What if it doesn't work out? What if we're just two lonely people who had a moment of connection in the middle of the night? Jake crossed the kitchen and took her hands in his. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But I don't think that's what this is. Do you? Alina looked into his eyes and saw something she'd never seen directed at her before. Not just attraction or desire, but genuine admiration and respect. No, she said quietly. I don't think it is either. Then let's give it a real chance. Let's see if we can build something together. Alina nodded, feeling a mix of terror and excitement. Okay, but we need to talk about Sophia first. She's protective of me, and she's not going to understand why some rich rancher is suddenly interested in her mom. What if I tell her the truth? That I was sad and lonely, and her mom helped me find my way back to the world. Alina smiled. She'd like that. Sophia has a big heart for people who are hurting. They ate breakfast as the sun climbed higher, talking about everything and nothing. Jake told her about his plans for the ranch, his dreams of turning it into a working artist's retreat. Alina shared her worries about Sophia's future, her hopes that her daughter would have chances she'd never had. I have a confession, Jake said, as he refilled their coffee cups. I've been thinking about offering you a job. Alina raised an eyebrow. As what? Ranch manager. I know you don't have experience with cattle or horses, but you're smart, you're organized, and you're great with people. I could teach you the rest. Jake's expression was earnest. I need someone I can trust, someone who shares my vision for this place. The salary would be enough to get you and Sophia out of that trailer and into the guest house here on the property. Alina felt her defenses rise. Jake, I don't want charity. It's not charity. It's a business proposition. I've been running this place alone for 3 years, and I'm burning out. I need help, and I think you'd be perfect for the job. The fact that I'm crazy about you is just a bonus. Alina studied his face, looking for any sign of pity or condescension. All she saw was sincerity and hope. You're serious. Dead serious. Think about it. Sophia could have her own room, her own space to create art. You'd have job security, benefits, a chance to build something meaningful. And we'd get to see where this thing between us goes without the pressure of your financial stress. Alina felt tears threatening. It sounds too good to be true. The best things usually do. Jake reached across the table and took her hand. Alina, I'm not trying to rescue you. I'm trying to partner with you. There's a difference. Alina looked around the beautiful kitchen, imagining what it would be like to wake up here every morning, to have Sophia running through these halls, to build a life with this man who saw her as more than just a struggling single mother. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. But Alina, Jake's thumb traced across her knuckles. Whatever you decide about the job, I hope you'll give us a chance. I hope you'll let me prove that this is real. Alina squeezed his hand. I think I already have. Sofia Martinez was nothing like Jake had expected. At 14, she was all long limbs and fierce independence, with her mother's dark eyes and a skeptical expression that reminded him of a young detective sizing up a suspect. She sat across from him in the corner cafe, arms crossed, studying him with the intensity of someone who'd learned early that adults couldn't always be trusted. So, you're the guy who's been secretly paying our bills, she said, without preamble, ignoring her mother's mortified expression. Jake nearly choked on his coffee. Alina told you about that. I figured it out myself. I handled the money stuff when Mom's at work. I'm good with numbers. Our bills kept getting mysteriously smaller, and Mom kept saying the companies were making mistakes. Sofia's expression was unreadable. I knew someone was helping us, but I didn't know who. Alina looked like she wanted to disappear under the table. Sofia, we talked about this. It's okay, Jake interrupted. She has a right to ask questions. I would too, if I were her. He turned to Sofia, meeting her challenging gaze directly. Yes, I helped with some bills. I know it probably seems weird, but I saw how hard your mom was working, and I had money, sitting around doing nothing. It seemed like the right thing to do. Why? Sofia's voice was sharp. Why us? Why not donate to charity or something? Jake paused, considering his answer carefully. This girl was clearly intelligent and protective of her mother. Any false note would destroy whatever chance he had of winning her over. Because I've been watching your mom for months, and I've never seen anyone work as hard as she does, or treat people as kindly as she does. She deserves better than struggling to keep the lights on. Jake's voice was steady, honest, and because I was lonely and angry, and didn't know how to help myself. But helping her made me feel like maybe I wasn't completely useless. Sofia's expression softened slightly. Mom said your wife died. She did. 3 years ago. I've been pretty lost since then. That sucks. Sofia's blunt sympathy was somehow more comforting than all the careful condolences Jake had received over the years. But that doesn't give you the right to play secret benefactor with our lives. Alina started to protest, but Jake held up a hand. She's right. I should have asked first. I didn't know how to approach you without seeming like some rich guy trying to buy his way into your good graces. Aren't you? Sofia challenged. Jake smiled despite himself. Maybe a little, but mostly I'm just a sad, lonely guy who thinks your mom is pretty amazing and would like a chance to get to know both of you better. Sofia studied him for a long moment, then turned to her mother. What do you think about all this? Elena's cheeks flushed. I think Jake is a good man who's been through something terrible, and he's trying to figure out how to live again. And I think maybe we could help each other. Are you in love with him? Sofia's directness made both adults squirm. Sofia. Alina gasped. It's a fair question, Jake said. The answer is, I don't know yet, but I'd like to find out. I care about your mom, and I already respect both of you more than most people I've known for years. Sofia nodded slowly, as if this response met with her approval. Okay, but I have conditions. Jake leaned forward. I'm listening. First, no more secret stuff. If you want to help us, you ask. Mom's got pride, and she's taught me to have pride, too. Agreed. Second, you don't get to discipline me or tell me what to do. I already have a mom, and she's doing fine. Understood. Third, if you hurt her, I will make your life miserable. I know people in this town, and I'm not afraid to use them. Jake tried not to smile at the 14-year-old's threat. I believe you, and I promise, I have no intention of hurting either of you. Sofia sat back, apparently satisfied. Okay then, can we order now? I'm starving, and you're buying. As they ordered breakfast, Jake found himself charmed by Sofia's dry wit and obvious intelligence. She asked him about the ranch, about his plans for the art center, about whether he knew how to cook anything besides eggs and bacon. She was protective of her mother but not possessive. Clearly mature beyond her years but still fundamentally a teenager. You know, Sofia said, as they waited for their food, Mom's been sad for a long time. She thinks I don't notice, but I do. She works all the time and never does anything just for herself. Maybe having someone around who actually sees how awesome she is would be good for her. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Sofia, I'm just saying. I wouldn't mind having someone around who can fix things when they break, and maybe teach me how to ride a horse. Sofia grinned at Jake. You do know how to ride a horse, right? Because if you don't, this whole cowboy thing is just false advertising. Jake laughed. the sound surprising him with its genuineness. I can ride a horse. I can also fix most things that break, and I make a mean grilled cheese sandwich. Now you're talking, Sophia said approvingly. I like him, Mom. He can stay. 2 weeks later, Jake found himself sitting on the floor of Elena's tiny trailer, helping Sophia with her algebra homework, while Elena worked her evening shift at the diner. The domestic scene would have seemed impossible just a month ago, but now it felt as natural as breathing. I still don't understand why we need to know about polynomials, Sophia grumbled, erasing her work for the third time. When am I ever going to use this in real life? Math is everywhere, Jake said patiently. Ranch management, budgeting, calculating feed ratios for livestock. Even art uses math proportions, perspective, color theory. Sophia perked up. Art uses math. Absolutely. Your mum mentioned you like to draw. Want to see something cool? Jake pulled out his phone and showed her images of the golden ratio in famous paintings. The mathematical precision of architectural masterpieces. The geometric patterns in nature. Sophia's eyes widened as she began to see the connections. That's actually kind of awesome, she admitted. I never thought about it that way. Most people don't. But once you start looking for patterns, you see them everywhere. Jake helped her work through the next problem, watching her face light up as the concepts clicked into place. They'd fallen into this routine over the past 2 weeks. Jake would pick Sophia up from school, help her with homework, and sometimes stay for dinner when Elena got home from work. It was tentative, careful, but it was building something: trust, familiarity, the fragile beginnings of a family unit. Elena had been cautious about the job offer, asking for time to think, to research, to make sure she wasn't making a mistake. Jake understood her hesitation. She'd been independent for so long, responsible for every decision, every consequence. Trusting someone else with her daughter's future wasn't something she could do lightly. Jake. Sophia's voice interrupted his thoughts. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. Do you still love your wife? The question hit Jake like a physical blow. He set down his pen and looked at this perceptive teenager who had a talent for cutting straight to the heart of things. Yes, he said quietly. I'll always love Sarah. She was my first love, my wife. That doesn't just go away. Sophia nodded solemnly. But you love Mum too, don't you? Jake felt his chest tighten. I'm starting to. Yes. Is that okay with you? I think it's okay to love more than one person, Sophia said with the wisdom of someone who'd grown up fast. Love isn't like money, it doesn't run out when you spend it. My mom taught me that. She's a smart woman. The smartest. But she's also scared. Sophia closed her textbook and turned to face him fully. She's scared that you're going to realize we're not worth the trouble. That you'll get tired of our small problems and our small lives and go find someone more suitable. Jake's heart clenched. Sophia, that's not going to happen. How do you know? You've been rich and alone for 3 years. We're poor and complicated. What if this is just some kind of phase for you? The raw honesty in her voice reminded Jake so much of Elena, the same vulnerability hidden behind practical questions. Because I've been rich and alone, and it's miserable. Because you and your mom have brought more joy into my life in 2 weeks than I've had in 3 years. Because when I think about the future now, I can't imagine it without both of you in it. Sophia studied his face intently. You really mean that? I really do. But Sophia, I need you to know, I'm not trying to replace your father or take over your lives. I just want to be part of them, if you'll let me. My father was never part of my life anyway, Sophia said matter-of-factly. And Mom's been alone for so long, she's forgotten what it's like to have someone take care of her for a change. What about you? Are you okay with someone taking care of you too? Sophia grinned. Depends. Are you going to be one of those adults who thinks teenagers don't know anything? Are you going to be one of those teenagers who thinks adults don't know anything? Probably. Sophia's grin widened. But I'm willing to compromise if you are. Jake laughed. Deal. But I have one condition. What's that? You have to let me teach you to ride. Your mom said you've always wanted to learn. Sophia's face lit up. Really, you'd do that? Of course. Every ranch kid should know how to ride. Ranch kid. Sophia's voice was careful, hopeful. Jake realized what he'd just said, and he didn't take it back. If you want to be, if your mom decides to take the job, she will, Sophia said confidently. She's just scared. But she'll say yes. How do you know? Because I've never seen her look at anyone the way she looks at you. And because last night, she was humming while she made dinner. Mom never hums unless she's really happy. Jake felt warmth spread through his chest. She hums, when she's happy. She hums this old song her grandmother used to sing. She hasn't done it in years. But she's been doing it ever since she met you. They heard Elena's key in the lock, and Sophia quickly opened her textbook again. Don't tell her I told you about the humming, she whispered. She'd be embarrassed. Elena walked in, tired but smiling, her hair escaping from its ponytail after a long shift. How's the homework coming? Jake's helping me see the mathematical beauty in the universe, Sophia said dramatically. It's very enlightening. Elena laughed, and Jake caught the sound like a gift. Is that so? And what other wisdom has he shared? That love isn't like money, Sophia said, shooting Jake a meaningful look. It doesn't run out when you spend it. Elena's cheeks flushed as she caught the undercurrent of the conversation. Sophia, Marie Martinez, what have you been talking about? Just math, Mom. And maybe a little philosophy. Jake stood, gathering his things. I should go. Let you two have dinner. Stay, Elena said quickly, then looked surprised at her own boldness. I mean, if you want to. I picked up Chinese food on the way home. Jake looked at Elena, then at Sophia, who was trying not to smile. I'd like that, but only if Sophia promises to tell me more about this mathematical beauty in the universe. Deal, Sophia said. But first you have to tell us about your plans for the Arts Center. I have some ideas. As they sat around the small table, sharing takeout containers and talking about dreams and possibilities, Jake realized that this was what he'd been missing, not just romantic love, but family, the easy intimacy of shared meals, the gentle teasing, the sense of belonging somewhere. Elena stood in the doorway of the guest house, watching Jake explain the finer points of fence repair to Sophia. 3 weeks had passed since their first meeting, and the easy familiarity between them still amazed her. Sophia, who was usually suspicious of adults, had taken to Jake like he'd been part of their lives forever. Mom, look, Sophia called out, holding up a section of wire fencing. Jake's teaching me how to twist the wire so it won't come loose in the wind. Very impressive, Elena said, trying to ignore the way her heart fluttered when Jake smiled at her. But don't you have homework? Already finished, Sophia said proudly. Jake helped me with the calculus problems that were giving me trouble. Elena raised an eyebrow. Since when do you take calculus? Since I decided I want to study engineering, Sophia said, as if this was old news. Jake says good engineers need to understand both the artistic and practical sides of design. Elena looked at Jake, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. We were talking about the art center, and she mentioned being interested in how buildings are constructed to be both beautiful and functional. And now I want to learn how to design buildings that don't fall down, Sophia added cheerfully. Jake says he'll teach me basic architectural principles if I keep my grades up. Elena felt a familiar pang of inadequacy. Here was something else she couldn't give her daughter: guidance in academic subjects. She'd never had the chance to study herself. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Jake seemed to sense her discomfort. Sophia, why don't you go wash up for dinner? I need to talk to your mom about something. Sophia nodded and jogged toward the main house, calling back, don't take too long, I'm starving. Elena and Jake watched her go, and Elena felt the weight of unspoken words between them. They'd been dancing around the job offer for weeks, and she knew he was getting tired of waiting for an answer. She's remarkable, Jake said quietly. So smart, so curious about everything. You should be proud. I am. But I'm also terrified I'm holding her back. Jake turned to face her fully. What do you mean? Look at her with you. Look how she lights up when you talk about engineering and architecture and mathematical principles. I can't give her that. I barely finished high school. Jake, I don't know anything about calculus or fence construction or any of the things that could help her reach her potential. Elena, no, let me finish. Elena's voice was thick with emotion. I see the way she looks at you, like you're opening up whole new worlds for her. And I'm grateful. I really am. But it also makes me realize how limited I am as a mother. Jake stepped closer, his expression serious. Elena, you're not limited. You're the one who taught her to be curious, to ask questions, to stand up for herself. You're the one who instilled those values in her. I can teach her about math and engineering, but I can't teach her to be the kind of person she is. Only you could do that. Elena felt tears threatening. But what if I'm not enough? What if she outgrows me? That's not how love works, Jake said gently. She's not going to outgrow you any more than you outgrew your grandmother when you learned things she didn't know. Growth doesn't diminish the foundation, it builds on it. Elena looked at him, This man who'd somehow become essential to her peace of mind in just 3 weeks. You really believe that? I know it. Alina, you've raised an incredible daughter under impossible circumstances. You've given her strength, compassion, intelligence, and dignity. Those aren't things you can learn in a textbook. Alina took a shaky breath. I've been thinking about your offer, the job, the guest house, all of it. Jake's expression became carefully neutral. And I'm terrified, Alina admitted. Not of the work, I know I can learn that, but of what it means. Of depending on someone else, of building a life that could disappear if things don't work out between us. Alina, the job isn't contingent on our relationship. Even if things don't work out romantically, you'd still have the position, the house, the security. I'd put that in writing if it would make you feel better. Alina studied his face, looking for any sign of insincerity. You really mean that? I really do. This isn't about romance, Alina. This is about building something meaningful together. Art center, the ranch, a future where Sophia can thrive. Whether we end up together or just as friends and business partners, I want you both in my life. Alina felt the last of her resistance crumble. Okay. I'll take the job. I'll move into the guest house. I'll help you build the art center and run the ranch and figure out what comes next. Jake's smile was brilliant. Really. But I have conditions. Name them. I want a real contract. Benefits, vacation time, clear job responsibilities. I want this to be professional, not charity. Done. And I want to contribute to the art center, not just with labor, but with ideas. I may not have formal training, but I know this community, and I know what people need. I was counting on it. And Alina stepped closer, her heart hammering. I want to see where this goes. Not just the job, but us. I want to try. Jake's hands came up to cup her face, his thumbs brushing away, tears she didn't realize had fallen. Alina, I've been waiting my whole life for someone like you, someone who sees the world with such clarity, who loves so fiercely, who makes me want to be better than I am. You already are better than you think, Alina whispered. Then let's be better together. When Jake kissed her, it was different from that first tentative kiss in the dawn light. This was a promise, a commitment, a leap of faith into an uncertain but hopeful future. Mom, Jake, Sophia's voice called from the house. Are you coming? I found a recipe for chocolate chip cookies, and I want to try it. They broke apart, laughing. Coming, Alina called back as they walked hand in hand toward the house. Alina felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. 1 year later, Alina stood in the renovated Barnton Art Center, watching Sophia demonstrate pottery techniques to a group of local kids. The space hummed with creative energy, easels scattered throughout the room, the scent of clay and paint in the air, laughter echoing off the high ceilings. She's a natural teacher, Jake said, coming up behind Alina and wrapping his arms around her waist, just like her mother. Alina leaned back against his chest, still amazed by how natural this felt, how perfectly they fit together. I never imagined she'd take to pottery so quickly. Sarah would have loved her, Jake said softly. She would have loved both of you. Alina turned in his arms, studying his face. Over the past year, she'd watched the shadows gradually leave his eyes, watched him learn to carry his grief without letting it consume him. They'd built something beautiful together, not just the art center, but a life, a family, a future neither of them had dared to hope for. Do you ever miss it? She asked. The quiet, the solitude. Jake laughed. Are you kidding? Between engineering projects, your community organizing, and having 20 kids in here every afternoon, I can barely remember what quiet sounds like. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. The art center had exceeded all their expectations. What started as a simple studio space had become the heart of the community, offering classes for kids and adults, hosting local art shows, providing a space for people to create and connect. Alina's instincts about what the community needed had been Spartan, and her natural leadership had made her indispensable to the program's success. Alina, Jake's voice had changed, becoming nervous, uncertain. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I just... I have something for you. Alina watched as Jake pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and her heart stopped. Jake... double quotes. I know we haven't talked about marriage specifically, but Alina, I can't imagine my life without you. Without Sophia. You've both become so essential to who I am, to who I want to be. Jake dropped to one knee, right there in the middle of the art center, surrounded by the sounds of creativity and laughter. Elena Martinez, will you marry me? Alina felt tears streaming down her face as she looked at this man who'd given her back her faith in love, in partnership, in the possibility of happy endings. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, of course, yes. The ring was perfect, a simple solitaire that caught the lights streaming through the skylights Sarah had designed. As Jake slipped it onto her finger, Alina heard a commotion behind them. Mom! Oh my God! Mom! Sophia was running toward them, clay-covered hands and all. Her face lit up with joy. Did he just propose? Did you say yes? I said yes. Alina laughed, pulling her daughter into a fierce hug. Finally, Sophia exclaimed. I was starting to think I'd have to lock you two in a room until you figured it out. You knew? Jake asked, standing and brushing off his knees. I helped him pick out the ring, Sophia said proudly. And I told him if he didn't propose soon, I was going to do it for him. Alina looked at these two people who'd become her world, and felt overwhelmed by the abundance of love in her life. Year ago, she'd been alone, struggling, afraid of the future. Now she was surrounded by community, purpose, and a love she'd never dared to dream of. So when's the wedding? Sophia asked practically. Because I have opinions about flowers and music and whether we should have it here or at the main house. We just got engaged 30 seconds ago. Alina laughed. Can we maybe enjoy this moment before we start planning? Fine, Sophia said. But Alina could see the wheels turning in her daughter's head. But I'm thinking spring. After I graduate, but before I start college. That way I can be here to help plan everything. Alina's heart squeezed. Sophia had been accepted to several engineering programs, with scholarships that would cover most of her expenses. The future Alina had barely dared to hope for was becoming reality. Spring sounds perfect, Jake said, pulling them both into a cliff. But right now, I think we should celebrate. Dinner at the nicest restaurant in town. Can we go to the diner instead? Sophia asked. I want everyone to see Mom's ring, and Betty makes the best pie in the county. Alina laughed. The diner, it is. As they walked toward the main house to clean up, Alina caught sight of a photo on the wall, one of Sarah's self-portraits, smiling and paint-splattered, radiating the kind of joy that transcends time. Alina had been nervous about keeping Sarah's artwork in the art center, worried it might be awkward or painful, but Jake had insisted, and now Alina understood why. Sarah's presence in the space wasn't haunting, it was blessing. Her dream of an art center filled with creativity and community had come true, just not in the way she'd imagined. Alina felt a profound sense of gratitude toward this woman she'd never met, but whose love had shaped the man who'd become her whole world. Thank you, she whispered to the portrait. What was that? Jake asked. Nothing, Alina said, smiling. Just grateful. As they drove toward town, Sophia chattering excitedly about wedding plans from the back seat, Alina looked at her engagement ring sparkling in the afternoon sun. She thought about the knock on her trailer door that had changed everything, about the courage it had taken to trust, to hope, to believe in the possibility of love again. She'd gone to clean a barn and found a family. She'd answered a desperate plea for help and discovered her own salvation. Sometimes the best things in life came disguised as work, as duty, as obligation. But underneath, they were always about love. I love you, she said to Jake, the words, as natural as breathing. I love you too, he replied, reaching over to squeeze her hand. Both of you, forever. Alina smiled, watching the familiar landscape of her new life roll by outside the window. She'd been paid to clean a barn, but she'd received something infinitely more valuable in return, a future filled with love, purpose, and the kind of happiness she'd thought existed only in stories. The lonely rancher had knocked on her door in the middle of the night, and she'd answered. It was the best decision she'd ever made.